So Oregon didn't just get commitments on the defensive side of the ball with Dorian, Brew, and Josiah Sharma. They also landed a pair of offensive commits, and I want to start with Jordon Davison. So Davidson comes out of modern-day high school. If you are an everydayer out there, I appreciate you even more so, but I appreciate everybody who listens to or watches this show, however often you choose to tune in. Davison is a guy that I am most excited about, not just because he is a modern-day high school product, but because this, again, was a recruiting battle that featured Ohio State, and Oregon comes out on top. If Oregon flips Naeem Offord, 5-star defensive back commit, to Ohio State, just a verbal commit. Oregon has had him on campus, trying to recruit him. Certainly it's not going to be easy. This will be one heck of a recruiting statement offseason for Dan Lanning and his staff, because they're doing just an outstanding job. And this is the second running back commit that Oregon has gotten in the class of 2025. Rashad Samples, hired from Arizona State after Lachlan left to go to Ohio State. Turns out that dude's really good. And I think Davison has got immense potential. Now, he is 6 feet tall. I got caught in between saying 6 feet, 6 foot. You know, I go back and forth. 216 pounds, out of the state of California at modern day. Number 6 running back in his class per 24/7 Sports. That's not too shabby. The reason I think he has that is when I watched his film, the first thing I saw when I first saw him carry a football, my initial thought was Thomas Tyner, who, coincidentally enough, I just walked by at the supermarket the other day. True story. Saw Royce Freeman a different day as well. Not even kidding. So it is not just a great coincidence, but also just a wonderful connection in my head that I see him and go, that's Thomas Tyner. That's what it looks like. He's a little bit bulkier. He's got good speed, and he has more lateral quickness than you think. Like his 24/7 Sports breakdown lists him as kind of a power back. And I see that. He has that component. He can run you over, but he's got the speed to kind of get you going to run somebody over. And I see Thomas Tyner all the way. This is a guy who 24/7 has been tracking, they said, since middle school, which is not uncommon, but also isn't something that happens with a lot of recruits. Typically, you first get on a school's radar like sophomore year. You know, a lot of kids grow around that time or start playing varsity football if they've been on JV as a freshman, you know, and it depends. It depends on every single recruit, of course. But you've been tracked since middle school. Big time recruit. Scouting report is that he's a very good receiver out of the backfield, not just on screens, has an every down back ability to him and has a very well-rounded skill set. And he and De'Aaron Hill Jr. will come in together, and that is a dynamic tandem. And what I like about having those two guys as Oregon's running backs for the class of 2025, I really feel like they are great complementary backs. And sometimes Oregon has had that, sometimes they haven't. You know, I think of like the Mark Helfrich years and such, kind of towards the end when you had like a Kenai Benoit, but also a Tony Brooks James or a Charles Nelson, you know, kind of change of pace guys. De'Aaron Hill Jr. is a little bit smaller, a little bit more of a scat back. He's a home run hitter. That he's got the acceleration, the high end speed. There's plenty of speed with Jordon Davison. He's definitely a guy that gets the ball more on first and second down than he would in a third down pass catching situation. Oh, by the way, did I mention he's reportedly terrific in those instances? Now, something to know about Davison is this senior season is going to be an important one on two fronts. Number one, you want to have a great year, of course. You want to carry all the confidence in the world coming into college. But most importantly, number two, he's got to stay healthy. So his junior year, he suffered an injury, which is kind of crazy because then most of the highlights you see are from his sophomore year. And I mean, that's just not a fair fight. If that guy is going and as a sophomore playing at that level, like this isn't just any California high school. It's modern day, which is one of the best in the entire country and in the state of California. So he comes from a high school with a great pedigree, but he had a lower body injury. Hopefully he's going to be able to be at full strength, and you would hate to see his career in high school and or in college be limited by that factor at all. But that's the only concern that I have with this guy as being a starting caliber back for the Ducks. I cannot shake that Thomas Tyner comp, and I think he's got plenty of potential. Could he play as a true freshman? Depends. That might depend on how healthy he is. I mean, you think about Jordon Davison last year. Maybe he would have played more as a true freshman, but he wasn't healthy. Had the injury in high school, and we'll see what Dickey's role ends up being this season for the Ducks. But that is the first offensive commit. Now, the second one is more than a little interesting. So DeShaun Bray, I've talked about him plenty of times before here on the show. This was down to Oregon and Tennessee, and he's verbally committed to Oregon. Oklahoma, LSU, and Ole Miss were also in the mix. 4-star, 6'6", 235-pound tight end from Derby, Kansas. Now, a lot of people who follow this stuff as closely as I do in many instances, which I absolutely respect, are going to wonder whether this means Oregon is not going to get Lincoln Cure. I do not believe that to be the case. Oregon absolutely has room in the class and on the roster to bring in multiple freshman tight ends. You know, they brought in 2 tight ends in the class of 2024, Roger Saliapaga, who's a converted wide receiver and probably needs to get his body into tight end shape a little bit more, and then AJ Pugliano from the Medford area. After this year, you'll have those 2 guys, Kenyon Sadiq. You've got room for a couple of true freshman tight ends. So I don't think the Lincoln Cure sweepstakes are over for Oregon by any stretch. Brame, really impressive tape. Top 120 player nationally, which is really not easy for a tight end to crack. He's a top 5 tight end in the class of 2025. Very agile in the open field, can make guys miss. Big leaping ability. Big leaping ability. He can line up in the slot. You can hit him with screen passes, pop passes. You could do little tight end sweeps like you see Oregon doing with Kenyon Sadiq or Georgia doing with Brock Bowers, what Stanford did last year a bit with Benjamin Urasic, who's now at Georgia, and I think is going to have a year much like Brock Bowers did in the last couple, or at least is going to have a role very similar to that. He's got very, what I call easy or soft hands. Like, catches don't look difficult. And, you know, I hate to use this particular example, but it's the best way to visualize it. Rome Odunze has very easy or soft hands. Like, catching the ball looks very natural, and he has great timing, and you always feel like he's going to catch football. So I think Brame absolutely, as a pass-catching oriented tight end, brings a lot to the table. On the blocking front, look, he's got plenty of size. 6'6", 235. 6'6", pretty big. Kenyon Sadiq is like 6'3", 6'4", and he's bulked himself up to around 230, 240 from the 210, 220 range that he was when he came out of high school out of the state of Idaho. And I think there are a lot of similarities between those two. As long as they can maintain, or at least just be solid as run and pass blockers, they're going to be elite parts of the offense, because I think these guys have just an athletic profile you don't see. I haven't seen a tight end jump like DeShaun Bray before. I really haven't. Like, his timing on jump balls is exquisite, but the way that he just leaps in the air, he looks like he's jumping off a trampoline sometimes. And I don't think you see that with tight ends very often. In fact, I know that you don't, because I watch the film of every tight end that Oregon gets, and guys don't jump like that. I think the one thing that he could improve upon is his route running. I don't think he's particularly crisp with the way that he runs routes. That's something, though, that comes with coaching. Drew Maringer, the tight ends coach, I think that's the number one thing to work on with DeShaun Bray. And far be it for me to be a recruiting expert, but I watched a decent amount of film. That was my takeaway. And I think that he can be one of those tight ends that you just have in the rotation, and you just feel good about getting the ball to. You get the ball to him in space, I think he'll be really good. Sharpen up the route running a little bit, and I think he can absolutely be a starting player. And, when you're that big, I see no reason he can't make an impact as a true freshman. Tight end, I'm looking like way ahead to shows in 2025 and beyond. Tight end is going to be a frequent topic of conversation on this show, because there are a lot of different ways that can go. So, love the commits. Absolutely love them. What a weekend for the Ducks. Do you think this show's over? Because guess what? It is not. More to get to coming up next.